wild experience. One of the crazier fun stories that stick out in my mind. We were at the vice president's residence at one point. We got reassigned to go to the vice president's residence to help the Secret Service if, God forbid, something happened there. One morning, we're driving there in a bus. Now, picture like 60 guys. We're just not showering. We're not sleeping. You know, we're just ropes at that point. We're eating whatever food we can get our hands on. And Bruce Springsteen came on the radio, the bus. And where I was sitting, a few of the guys, we started singing. And it was so neat that, like, again, take the circumstances out, like the historic nature of what we were actually doing. You know, we were at a gate waiting to go in the vice president's area, like on his personal residence. And Bruce Springsteen comes on, and you have a bunch of these New Jersey soldiers sitting on a bus. You know, there were probably like 10 to 12 of us that were in the back of the bus, started singing it. And it was just one of those moments where, and Jesse, we could talk about it probably for the next 3 days. Like, Bruce's music transcends so much. And at the same time, it is so much of those moments.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and joining me tonight is a guest that the masses pushed me to have. Frank Luna tweeted something, and all of a sudden I had 2 or 3 people like, oh, you should have Frank on the podcast. You should have Frank on the podcast. So Frank, due to popular demand, thank you for joining me.
It's amazing what the masses can do on Twitter, Jesse.
Absolutely.
All three of them, baby. We're in business.
You know, sometimes it's good to know that Twitter can be used for good, not necessarily bad, because I will tell you, today I got randomly selected by Twitter to answer questions about politics on Twitter. Okay. And, you know, they were asking, you know, what do you do? And I was able to tell. And it's very interesting how I saw that on your LinkedIn page, you spent time working for the administration, right? You worked in state government, right?
Yeah. I worked. Yep. I worked. You know, I spent 15 years in politics and government, mostly in New Jersey.
Okay.
And, you know, I worked for Governor Christie, which I think might have been the comment that led somebody to tag me. You know, something like that. And so I worked for Governor Christie from his first campaign through, you know, just shy of the second inauguration. And that was, you know, a wild experience being a kid from Southern Ocean County, which, if you're familiar with New Jersey, very, very middle class,
right,
Bay Shore community. You know, to be a kid of you know, my mother was a hairdresser. My dad was a mechanic at the local military base.
Right.
You know, to be the first kid in my family to go to college and then end up working for a governor. I mean, take politics out of it, you know, whether you like the politician or not, it was just a really neat part of my life to do that.
Well, you know what, my boss at my day gig has been involved with politics his most of his adult life, and he's run campaigns, and like he talked about, he always picks the person. So he's worked for Republicans, he's worked for Democrats. It's always a person he believes in. And we were talking about how fractured the society is. And I gave him the example, you know, I always joke that, and I'm not joking, I would love to have Governor Christie on the job, and I would not talk politics at all. I would talk about his fandom of Bruce Springsteen, and also him being this huge Roger Staubach fan, right? Like, you know, living in Jersey and becoming a Cowboy fan, I would just love to hear that, because, you know, I live in Dallas.
Yeah.
And am every time that happens, because I always just kind of tongue in cheek, like maybe one day someone running his Twitter will go, "Hey, Governor Christie, do you want to talk Springsteen?" Um, and I always get hate tweets that say, well, "I won't listen to that one. Oh yeah, I'd want to be on the show so I could just tell him what a POS he is." And I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, guys. I'm not having someone who incited a riot on January 6th. I'm just going to talk to a guy about Bruce the same way I'm talking to anyone else.
Yeah, and Jesse, I think we've just lost sight of that so much. I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and you touched on it. Like, everything has become so political
Yeah.
that. But and here's the thing: I don't think it's necessarily very new.
Yeah.
I just think we hear it more. The news is 24/7. Social media, we see arguments 24/7.
Yes.
So, and generally negative things catch our attention for whatever reason. I don't know why.
If it bleeds, it leads, right? That's forever, for sweeps weeks, right?
But Christie, he's an interesting cat, man. Like, and we could talk Bruce, that guy. I mean, you want to talk Bruce Springsteen? Talking it with him is like, you need to be on another level times 5.
Exactly.
To even like be in the same realm. Like, that is a guy who spent decades driving up and down the Parkway in New Jersey, trying to find Bruce Springsteen in Asbury Park in the 80s. I mean, he taught, and Harlan Coben was a friend of his growing up. And he even talks about how they would just hop in the car and drive south because they heard Bruce might be somewhere near the Stone Pony. And I can tell you, I have done that. Now, I'm 38.
Yeah.
So, you're talking generations of New Jersey people, and probably even further if you think about like Light of Day. People come from Europe,
right,
expecting Bruce to be
just in case.
Yes, just in case. But Christie, I'll tell you a quick funny story. And
please.
But you mentioned the Cowboys. I was at a Giants Cowboys, and I'm a Giants fan, born and raised at the Jersey Shore. Giants, Yankees, like that's what it is for me. And we're at a Giants Cowboys game, and a few years ago, I was in the governor's box, and I've known the governor at this point, then Governor Christie. I knew him for a while, just from being around, and he's got that scrappy blue collar mentality, and I'm cut from that cloth. So I think there were times that we could rib each other in a way that you wouldn't necessarily rib the governor of the state of New Jersey.
Exactly.
Like, you have to be able to like do it. You can't like miss. You can't swing and miss. So the Giants were playing the Cowboys. The Giants just had great play, an amazing play. And of course, I got up and celebrated, and I was sitting across the aisle from him. So I was on an aisle seat. He was on an aisle seat, and I'm like fired up. I'm turning at him. I'm talking, I'm chatting a little bit.
Sure.
And he pulls on my shirt. Like, he just reaches over, he pulls on my shirt, and he looks down at the field and he points. He says, "Frankie, there's a little laundry on the field. You might want to sit down."
Oh, I love that.
And that's like, again, love him or hate him, like, take politics out of it. Like, that was just that's a real person moment.
Yes.
And I think politics, for whatever reason, has just become so clouded. And, if you're on this side, you're evil. If you're on this side, you're not. And, I can't stand it right now, Jesse. Yeah. It's mind-boggling to me. We've all, one of the things I love that Bruce does, he has the local food banks collecting money outside of his shows. I don't know how long he's done it. Probably a very long time. I mean,
a long time. I mean, I think that's one of the earliest things he did at his shows.
So, I love that, because to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. It's those local grassroots groups. And it's not like he just picks like one big organization that does every show. Like, it's a local group at every show that's like feeding people in the street.
Like, when he's here, he talks about the North Texas Food Bank.
Sure. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And
And dude, I love that.
I do
like,
too.
That, to me, that's it. Like, those are the things that I try to focus my time and energy on. What is the local group that I can raise $150 for on a Facebook post? It's so I just, take politics out of it. They're going to do what they're going to do in DC. They're going to do what they're going to do in the state capital of Texas.
Right.
And, it's just, we got to remember, man, like we're people and we can do a
Yes.
lot to help each other out at a very granular level.
Yeah.
We remember that.
I did want to tell you, and then we'll get to, but you mentioned Harlan Coben, and one of my favorite writers, right? And so this is pre-pandemic. He had come to Dallas at a book signing. And so, he had done a reading, he had talked about the book. And so I'm standing in the back and they go, anyone got questions? Man, I just shot my hand up just immediately.
Hell
right.
Yeah.
And he goes, yes, you in the back. I said, so have you already, are you going to get Springsteen on Broadway tickets? And he's like, that is not the question I expected first in my book signing.
Yeah.
But yes, I am hoping to go. Now then, questions about the book, and I kind of, and so when I got up there and signed, he laughed at it and we joked. And he actually on the book said, I'll meet you at Badlands or something like that.
Cool.
I'll meet you in Jungle Land, I think he wrote. Yep. And so he's one that I also would love to have on the show. And it would be tougher for me not to talk about his books because I'm such a fan, but it would just love to hear him talk about his Springsteen. All right. Well, Frank, you kind of already, but give us a little introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Jesse, born and raised at the Jersey Shore. Like I said, I mean, my mother was a hairdresser. They're still with us. When she worked, she was a hairdresser. My dad was a mechanic on aircraft carriers at the local military base. Very normal Jersey Shore upbringing. My brother became a cop. My sister became a nurse. Very just the salt of the earth people that, in my mind, kind of make our country go.
Yes, absolutely.
I think especially during this pandemic and the issues that have been brought to light in the law enforcement community over the past few years, the difficulties. If you're a good cop, you've experienced difficulty.
Yes.
In seeing how some of your colleagues act. Seeing how some folks in the community may feel about you that you don't even know because you've never had those conversations. You've never listened because it's never been brought to your attention. So, I just think about all that they've gone through. My brother as a police officer and my sister who's a nurse through COVID. I mean, just it's amazing. They just, to me, I look up to I'm the oldest and I just look up to my brother and sister so much, dude. I just, what they do day in and day out, man, I've done some cool things in my life, but I can't hold a candle to what they do and how they act and carry themselves. And it's really, really awesome. We touched on, I've worked in politics and government. Right now I work for the local power company, kind of helping, which I love. It's such a cool job because I'm in the community. I'm working on issues, we talked about where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
I spent 20 minutes on the phone with a lady today who was upset that a streetlight was out by her house, and that to me matters. Like that's being
makes a difference to her life.
Exactly. And who wants to spend 20 minutes on the phone talking about a streetlight? Nobody. No. But she did. And that to me is just a recurring theme in my life where it's like, how can I just make that extra phone call? How can I do that one extra thing? And I'm not perfect at it. I'm very imperfect on a million levels. Ask anyone who's ever dated me. It's just, and again, I'm a lucky guy. I'm 38. I have a great job. I'm in the Army National Guard, which has been a very interesting course of events. I was down at the Capitol after the events of January 6th. So, I mean.
Oh, wow. That must have been scary.
Jesse, honestly, it wasn't scary. And here's why. It was when you're a trained, we're an infantry unit, so we're infantry soldiers. We're trained for that. And I was not there the day of the event. I was there a few days after. I was in that first wave when everybody woke up and saw us sleeping in the Capitol. Like I was one of those guys. Yeah. Which, it was a wild experience. One of the crazier fun stories that stick out in my mind. We were at the vice president's residence at one point. We got reassigned to go to the vice president's residence to help the Secret Service if, God forbid, something happened there. Right. One morning we're driving there in a bus. Now picture like 60 guys. We're just, not showering, we're not sleeping, you know, we're just
Sure.
gross at that point. We're
Yeah.
eating whatever food we can get our hands on. And Bruce Springsteen came on the radio
Yeah.
of the bus. And where I was sitting, a few of the guys, we started singing. And it was so neat that, like, again, this take the circumstances out, like the historic nature of what we were actually doing. You know, we were at a gate waiting to go in the vice president's area, like on his personal residence. And Bruce Springsteen comes on, and you have a bunch of these New Jersey soldiers sitting on a bus. You know, there were probably like 10 to 12 of us that were in the back of the bus, started singing it. And it was just one of those moments where, and Jesse, we could talk about it probably for the next 3 days. Like, Bruce's music transcends so much. And at the same time, it is so much of those moments. So, you know, that's just a rare, very good.
No, I'm thinking of that Almost Famous scene, right, where they're all on the bus and you know, Elton John's Tiny Dancer comes on, right, and they all start, you know, there's all this, they're mad at each other, and then all of a sudden, you know, that kind of music breaks the ice, and you know, so I'm picturing that in my moment, you know, the Bruce song going on, and just here's all these guys and just bonding. That's great.
It was, and you know, even just now, you know, that was, gosh, almost a year ago now.
Yeah.
And I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
You know, that was one of many moments in just crazy experiences that Bruce is that, and how many Bruce fans say this? Bruce is the soundtrack to my life. You know, in so many different moments, right, Jesse? I mean,
it is the reason I now have almost 700 episodes of this podcast. I've been doing it for 6 years, and I always worry that I'm going to run out of people to talk to, and I just don't, because so many people love this man's music. And then also when you branch it out, because I do this, you know, I'll talk to people, and I'm like in LinkedIn, or someone will reach out, or another podcaster, and I'm like, look, do you have a favorite musician? If you do, join the show, talk to me. I don't care if it's Leonard Cohen, I don't care if it's Queen, I don't care if it's the Bee Gees, I don't care if it's Metallica. If you're passionate about them, join me on the show, share that joy, share that love. And you know, because it makes for a great conversation.
It does. And Jess, you know, I was listening to one podcast where you were talking about kind of how you went through cancer.
Yeah.
You know, and God bless you. You know, I mean,
that
to me, you are a hero. You know,
thank you. I appreciate that.
I mean it, because I can only imagine just sitting there when the doctor's like, "Hey, man, you got cancer," or however even the hell that goes. Like, I don't even know. Like, it's just what goes through your mind. And I'm not a betting guy, but I will bet that there were probably nights where you're like, how am I going to do this? And like a Bruce Springsteen song comes on, or you watch a YouTube video or a DVD of your favorite concert of his. And then multiply that by the 700 people you've talked to through this show.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about the joy you're spreading in that, and the strength of your story, you know, multiplying by 700. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll tell a quick story about that, just, and I've told this before, but I haven't talked about it in a while. So, you know, I was in a lot of pain, and so my doctor said, go to the emergency room. So they're like, oh, we think you have a tumor. We know it's tumor. And then by the third day, and it's cancer, you know. And so they're talking about it, and then the heart doctor's got to make sure your heart's strong enough for surgery. And so it was on a Sunday, and my wife, feeling the pressure and everything, we'd gotten in a little bit of an argument. Nothing major, but just, you know, just all the pressure going on. I probably was a little bit of a jerk. She was a little bit impatient with me. And so she had gone home, and I had a couple people with me, and the heart doctor came in and said, your test doesn't look like your heart's strong enough for surgery. He says, I'm going to have to do a different kind of test to make sure you're okay. And so all of a sudden, you know, the few people were with me, you know, hugged me, and I'm laying there alone in the hospital room, like, holy crap, what am I going to do? So I took my phone and I created an FUCK cancer playlist.
There you go.
And I just threw Bruce on there, and I threw a few other artists that I love, and I just put my headphones on. I put my head under the cover in the hospital room, and I just threw myself in music. And surgery, and my heart was fine. I ended up having surgery. I had to go through like 8 rounds of chemo. And Frank, I never listened to a podcast. I didn't watch videos. Every time I went in for chemo, I had a playlist going on, and just the music of Bruce. Jason Isbell had the Nashville Sound had just come out. I played it, and it was all music, just upbeat, beautiful music, just to, it's okay, you're going to be there. And it is not a cliche to say he is the soundtrack of our lives. He has been our good companion. When he says you need a good companion for this part of the ride, and I think his music has been a companion to many of us.
Yeah, man. And like, I have Badlands tattooed on my arm.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine also has that.
Yeah.
And, and it's a wild story, man, but life comes at you, as you know. And my buddy, dude, we grew up together. My aunt had passed away. This kid was a rock. I mean, you want to talk about just a guy who's there for you no matter what. And just an unsung hero in the story of my life on many levels. And his wife ended up having some medical issues and went through a very difficult time. She was in a vegetative state. Dude, 28 years old. Vegetative state, perfectly healthy girl, just happened one morning. Vegetative state. But one of those songs that him and I listened to was Badlands over and over and over and over again. Because part of it too, and he was a young guy, think about that struggle. Your wife's in a vegetative state. She eventually passed away, God bless her, and him and her family and his. And, but that was a young guy trying to figure out, how do you manage this? Like, you're 28, dude. You're not supposed to be burying your wife.
Exactly.
You're supposed to be talking about kids and, what's next. And, so Badlands is one of those songs that carried us through that moment and in time, and which was a lot longer than one moment. And fast forward a few years, I was working at a beach bar and convention hall in Asbury Park. Yeah. And one of the cool stories, I'm gonna tell it now. Why not? I mean, we were working. It was Labor Day weekend of 2013 in September. I was working on one side. My buddy Teeds texts me and says, I had a few missed calls from him, and then I saw a text message. I was busy. It was Labor Day weekend at a beach bar at Convention Hall. The one text he sends, Bruce is here.
Wow. Okay.
Now, like, I think that he's kidding with me, right? Like, you're a Jersey Shore guy. You're like, Bruce is around on Labor Day weekend. Okay, whatever. Yeah, like, he's in a beach bar Labor Day weekend. And I, like, slowly make my way over there. I expect to see Teeds standing at the bottom of the ramp, like, hey, let's go grab coffee real quick, shift change, whatever. Yeah. I don't see him. So I keep walking up the other ramp, and I walk in the bar, and I see, like, a guy. I'm behind him, Bruce, and I see Teeds, the bartender. And I'm behind Bruce, and I see, like, a Bruce-ish guy, with the hat, the white T-shirt, a guy that doesn't look like a 23-year-old girl in a bikini at the beach bar, which is what you get at a beach bar. And I walk around the bar, and I see, like, okay, that's Bruce Springsteen. Like, what the hell is going on right now? Yes. And, it's Labor Day weekend, Asbury Park. Like, you name it, man. Like, you can't draw it up any better. My buddy Teeds gave him a shot of Patron in a little plastic shot glass because it's all we had. Yeah. It's not like a nice bar. It's a little plastic shot glass. I walk behind the bar. I show Bruce this tattoo, and he gives me a high five. And I'm like, wow. That's awesome. That just freaking happened. Yeah. And Jenny, like, that's one of the many stories like that along the boardwalk. And the craziest part of that, at that point, I'm done. Like, I'm working. Bruce is hanging. The other guys are working that bar. I'm done. Like, I'm not going to be that guy. Like, oh, hey. So I go stand with some security guys. Bruce comes over to us. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey guys, what's going on? Like, this is a packed house. I haven't seen Asbury looking this hot in a while. And, where are these people from? And how are you guys making money? How was the summer? Asked all the questions that like a plugged in Jersey guy would ask at a beach bar. And I said at the end of the conversation, and you're not supposed to do this. I'm working, but I had to do it. I'm like, hey, Bruce, I don't want to be that guy, but I have your song tattooed on my arm. Can I walk you out and grab a quick picture? He's like, yeah, I'm going to need you to get me out of here anyway.
Yeah.
Me and another security guy are walking Bruce Springsteen through Convention Hall, talking to him like it's you and me. And we take a cool picture. He gives me a handshake and he's on his way. And that happened like 3 or 4 times on the boardwalk over the years where I'd see him and you talk and chat.
So you sent me 3 photos, all at different ages. Bruce looks the same in all of them. You look like different, like he's made a deal somewhere to still look this good, right? I mean, so I think that's hilarious. Yep. You talked about Badlands. Another song to me was All That Heaven Will Allow. Because of the phrase, now some may want to die young, man, young and gloriously. Get it straight now, mister. Hey, buddy, that at me, because I've got something on my mind, that sets me straight and walking proud. I want all the time that heaven will allow. Yeah. And if you're fighting cancer, or if you're fighting anything, you do that. I want all the time that heaven will allow. And it is one of the things I think that comes through to this is that how flexible his music is. That, let's take The Rising, 9/11, but before that it was about a city struggling, and then it was about New Orleans after Katrina, and just this is it and then this last presidential election, right? The Democrats were playing The Rising, during their themes. It is just such, it's almost a Rorschach test, of you, that you see yourself in his music and how it speaks to you.
Well, and Jesse, the Rorschach is great, like way to put it, because, and I am not, look, I'm a Republican guy. I'm a pro-union, like as pro-union as you could get, especially like the building trades. Like I will not work for a Republican politician if they're not pro-labor. Like I just won't. I would never. That's one of my things. It's like a stake in the ground. You mentioned your colleague who's like, hey, certain things, I'll work for Republican or Democrat. I've only worked for Republicans, but if you're not pro-labor, I'm good.
I'm not going to do it. Right.
So that's, to me, it's just like, we have got the men and women who have built this country need to be taken care of in a way that generations have forgotten. Right. So, and I think labor, especially, our blue collar trade labor unions are it. Like that to me is like it. So, I'm not the type who says, shut up and sing. Right. I value art. I value that somebody's opinion may be different than mine on a certain issue. But we probably want to get to almost the same place. We just have a different way of getting there.
Frank, you have just taken exactly what I was going to tell you. One of my best friends is a guy from Ohio. He is an artist. He is he works, he is an independent. So he is a small businessman, but he self-publishes comic books. He writes. He does comic conventions, making all this. So he is as conservative as far as business as you can be. But he says what he misses, and I think you just said it perfectly. You want safe borders. I want safe borders. We just disagree how to get there. Let's find a way we both can agree. You want everyone to have health insurance. I want everyone to have health insurance. Let's talk about how we do this together.
And the interesting thing is, you probably even agree on about 60% to 70% of how you do it.
Right.
A lot of times it's just, the things around the fringes that get stuck. And, I use this line. I have Republican friends, I have Democrat friends. Look, I still work in the bars in Asbury Park. That is that is a progressive community that I
Right.
have very good friends that are heavily involved in different causes. And,
Yeah.
I think of Garden State Equality, which is a gigantic LGBTQ organization that I love the guy who runs it. He's a friend.
Yeah.
I've helped them. They were having an issue. There was a bigot group that was they wanted to take the rainbow flag down in front of their office. It was hanging on one of our utility poles. I work for the utility company.
Yeah.
And it got to my desk and I said, look, stop. Like, this isn't going to get taken down. If anything, I'm going to come out and help put it up even higher.
Yeah.
So, it's those things, but, and I joke with people sometimes. I'm like, the same people who are telling Bruce Springsteen to shut up and sing or got mad about that Jeep commercial, which, by the way, was amazing.
Yeah.
The same people who are saying shut up and sing or got mad about the Jeep commercial are singing Born in the USA at the top of their lungs while they chug Budweiser.
Yes.
And it's like, dude, like, you can't do both. You can't tell a guy to shut up and sing and then celebrate that song in a way that it was never intended to be celebrated.
Yeah. And this almost makes me weep just out of joy because, and little Steven will tweet this a lot, right? That we need two parties. That is where you find your strength in debating and coming up with a good solution that compromise means, well, not everyone's happy, but that's okay. We got something done and there's something good for there. And yeah.
No, go ahead, please.
And please. The extreme right and the extreme left, I think they start becoming more about winning than more about accomplishing. And that I know has got to be frustrating to you because it's frustrating to me.
Sure. And I love Stevie, man. I met him outside Convention Hall one time and he was as cool as you could ever hope. And, but look, even just think about Steve's experience in the East Street Band.
Yeah.
He was a guy that probably a lot of times was going head to head with Bruce.
Yeah.
And he was the one leading Bruce in a direction or, helping Bruce get to a direction and Bruce was helping Steve. And those two guys had a lifetime of compromise.
Yeah.
I would guarantee, you ask either one of them, like they're probably 50-50 on their battles.
Well, yeah. And like they talked about, tracks are some of those are the arguments. Little Steven says, these are the songs I lost the battle out. Yeah. Like, no, this one we should have been kept for ourselves. Instead, we went to other people.
Yeah.
I usually start with, and we're already into, a 30-minute conversation, but, what kind of music did you listen to? What kind of music did your family listen to growing up?
Crazy enough, Jesse, my mother, again, she was a hairdresser in the 80s at the Jersey Shore. So, I mean, Bruce Springsteen, Bon Jovi. I mean, and the cool thing is I live in Bradley Beach now. Yeah. And I found this out not too long ago. I've lived here about 11 years. Bon Jovi used to live literally in an apartment right across from me, like in my apartment complex during Slippery When Wet. That
okay. Yeah.
And that photo shoot was like 2 blocks away from me in Bradley Beach. Bruce used to live on 5th Avenue in Bradley Beach, which is a few streets away from where I live right now. He wrote Sandy there. Okay. In Bradley Beach. And I saw Bruce at a book signing once. I was wearing a Bradley Beach t-shirt. And a book signing happened to be in Georgia, where I met a buddy of mine, Jamie, who is one of the guys. He's a veteran who he tweets a lot about your stuff. And we met at that event. I was wearing a Bradley Beach shirt. And Bruce like, you're a long way from home. I'm like, hey, man, I traveled all the way down here. He's like, oh, yeah, I used to live over on 5th Avenue. I'm like, how cool is that? Yeah. So Bruce's music was around me a lot. I kind of got into like the punk rock stuff. We were close to CBGB's in New York City. So, there were New York hardcore music, not necessarily what you would think of like Deftones screaming stuff, more like punk rock. Yeah. And I remember there was a local band that used to cover No Surrender. Okay. And that was one of the first times as a teenager where Bruce Springsteen was no longer my mom's music.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, Bruce Springsteen's kind of punk.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell did this happen? And then you start like diving into his music a little bit in my late teens, my early 20s. And so I think that's when I got past the top, the greatest hits album, and started diving into things like The River, which today, to me, at 38, never married, no kids, that constant struggle of seeing what everybody else has and wondering, like, do I like the ties that bind, right? I
Yeah.
don't have those in a lot of ways.
Sure.
I'm a single guy who lives at the beach at the Jersey Shore. Single. I'm dating a beautiful, great woman who, but I'm saying, I'm not a married guy
I
to a
get
house.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was pretty neat to me because I can literally pinpoint that moment and hearing that band play it and then being like, oh, maybe this isn't my mom's music. And then, just going down the rabbit hole in my late teens and 20s. And as I've continued to develop and grow and, I just like, I love so many different facets of his music but punk rock and hardcore took me to that.
Yeah.
A lot of guys would say, oh, Bruce Springsteen's a sellout. Dude, that guy's as punk rock as anybody. I mean, and I love what he's done with Gaslight Anthem, years ago when he was, playing with those guys. Like, Bruce Springsteen came alive on stage with those guys at Convention Hall. They were a local Jersey punk band, and so,
as a fan, you love seeing the amount of people and the diversity of people who talk about how his music has influenced them.
Sure.
Like Ken Rosen, when he does the covers and he shows, Ken Rosen on his blog, right? He'll show all this diverse people doing covers of Bruce's songs and making them different and working. It's fascinating. All right. I always like to preface this, and if you've heard the podcast, I do this, that the amount of times you've seen him in concert is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are. There are people that have never seen him. And in fact, I've had two recent people that are extensive world travelers. They have lived in multiple countries. They have traveled thousands of miles and each have only seen him once. Wow. It's like, how with you doing this? And they's like, it just never worked out. But for the record, do you count how many shows you've seen?
Jesse, I don't. I'm in the neighborhood of, I would say probably like that 13 to 16 range. And I have to one day figure out exactly how many it's been. But crazy things, like I saw him at the book signing. I saw him at two different book signings. I've seen him on the boardwalk half a dozen times. I saw him at the Wonder Bar. Remember, he did like a 2-hour set with Joe Grishecki a few years ago at the Wonder Bar in Asbury Park. Jesse, I was 3 feet from the stage. My head exploded. I was like, how is this, this is what it was like back then?
Yeah.
350 people in the bar, and Bruce Springsteen and Joe Grishecki's band, and Joe Grishecki himself is a great musician. Those guys just blew the roof off that place. I left. I remember I had to take my shirt off when I left the bar because it was drenched.
Yeah.
It covered in sweat and beer and water. It was, and probably some other liquids. Who knows? But
that exactly.
So probably at 13 to 16 range, I would say.
Yeah. Do any stories from shows you want to share? You've already told some great ones about meeting him and book signings. How about show stories?
Okay. Convention Hall, 2009.
Yeah.
Rehearsal show. The second night. I didn't have a ticket.
Okay.
Just didn't. I didn't have a ticket. They were hard to get. What is that? A 2,000 person venue. I showed up hours before the show with a sign. I'm probably in my mid-20s at that point, maybe 23, 25, whatever it was. 2013. So I was 24, whatever.
Okay.
I showed up with a sign that said, Jersey Shore kid needs one ticket. That's it. Now, Jesse, if you are a Jersey Shore kid, that's a shot.
Exactly.
That's
there you go.
I appealed to his better nature. Right. I had no idea I was going to see Bruce Springsteen enter the facility. I had no idea. I just thought maybe somebody coming up might have an extra ticket and just say, hey, I would pay double for it. It wasn't like a money thing. It was, they were $100 seats. Sure as hell, Jesse, I end up in a place that I would end up working years later, Convention Hall.
Yeah.
I end up like on a little side alley, and the security guard says to me, he's like, "Hey, Bruce Springsteen's going to be here soon. You see where all those fans are standing?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "They might have an idea of where he comes in."
Okay.
Deal.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Got
go
it.
over there. Sure as hell, Bruce Springsteen's car pulls up. He hops out. He's signing autographs. There's probably 15 people there. It was like the middle of the
Yeah.
day. The show was that night. I'm not like, I don't want to ruin the moment because there's 15 people. Everyone's getting their shot to see Bruce Springsteen. So I'm just standing with my sign like this, dude. And I'll send you a picture because I have a great picture outside convention hall with it. And I'm standing there with the sign up, and he's kind of like, he looks over. I can see like he noticed me. He's got sunglasses on. He looks over at me. I stood out a little bit with the sign.
Yeah.
I said, "Bruce, since I can't get a ticket, have out an autograph." He looks over at me and he chuckles and he looks at the sign. I thought maybe he was just going to sign the sign and call it good. He taps the guy next to him. He says, "Get that kid in the show, will you?" Dude, that was it.
That's it. Yeah.
That was it. The guy, but I'm like, how? Like, what am I going to do? Like, they don't know my name.
Yeah.
And they walked away.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, I'm done. Like, I missed my shot.
Right.
I'm standing outside with the sign. A cop comes up. This is 2 hours later. A cop comes up to me. He's like, "Bruce Springsteen's guys are looking for you." I'm like, "Are you serious? Are you kidding me?" The cop's like, "Come on, come with me." Like, and I'm like, "All right." So we walk up, and his trainer, Tony, at the time, introduces himself. He's like, "Hey man, like, great sign, like, good idea." And he hands me a ticket. And dude, I got in that venue. I was front row, and I had a Yankees hat on. Maybe I made this moment up in my head. I have to find if there's a tape of it, because I swear at one point during the show, I'm like front. Yeah. He says, "You made it, man," and he pointed right at me. And again, I don't know if I made that up. Maybe I did, but that happened in my mind, and that was just.
That's awesome. That is greatness.
Yeah, just
that's
that
hilarious.
Was like as scrappy as it gets. Like, I love that. That's just, it's just, the Jersey Shore kid needs one ticket, man. Nobody should steal that. Nobody else should steal that. That's copyrighted.
I've had a couple of people talk about that. It's really the experiences, not necessarily the amounts. Or, there's talk about, now that Bruce is in his 70s, will we get the 4-hour show, or will it go down to less than 3? Will it go to 2? And the reality is, right, it's the experience. It isn't the time. It's those moments. Are we going to get those magical moments? And someone, I think it was the guys at the None But the Brave podcast, talked about like the no nukes, like, because they knew they only had 90 minutes, that they almost treated it like an encore. They had that energy of going in like, oh, this is the encore. And I think that's a perfect example. That's a memory that is something special, right? That he took it. And I asked this during the River Tour. And I said the second River Tour, because there were so many stories about him signing kids' permission slip to excuse them being late, having people come on stage and sing with them. And I said, is this always happened and we just didn't hear about it? Or is this happening more now because Bruce is just in a looser, better place? And I think it's a little bit of both. I think social media makes it a little bit easier. One of the things that's beautiful is, when he's touring and, he showed up a couple of years ago at Brian Wilson was there, and he ended up being on stage for the encore. Bruce played with him, and, I got to see that. And so there is now, because of cell phone and everything, there is a lot of moments we see. So I just think that's a great moment that just, that's wonderful.
I mean, and again, you just go up there like you're on a wing and a prayer. But how many guys throughout their young 20s, just don't know how old you are. I mean, but you're
62.
Yeah, so 62 years old. Think about it. So for decades, you would show up at a Ticketmaster on a Saturday morning, just like,
Yes.
please, can I be the guy who gets in line?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So that's kind of in my mind. It was like, hey, I'm going to give this thing a shot. It was 2009. So it was before social media dictated every move in our lives.
Right.
So it's not like I was doing it for some Facebook thing. I was doing it because I'm like, I don't know, maybe somebody. So I'm going to appeal to everyone going to that show.
Yeah.
And if they,
because it's like one of those things when you're looking for a job, right? I talk about this. You don't want to be that guy who's always talking about, hey, I'm still looking for a job, but at the same time, you don't want your friends and your network to, oh, well, I haven't heard from Jesse, he must have gotten something, right? So it's kind of like, I'm not trying to be pushy, but hey, there might be someone that has, oh, my friend ended up not coming, or, I just broke up with my girlfriend, so I have an extra ticket. And absolutely, Donna with Bruce Funds, right? That's what she does. She,
Angels. Gosh, I love those people. I love them.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're just trying to find, available tickets to available people and putting them together.
Yep.
Thoughts on Western Stars and Letter to You?
Loved it. I loved Western Stars. Now, I went and saw Western Stars in a movie in Freehold, in a movie theater in Freehold by myself. When exactly did that come out? Was that that was in the fall?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It wasn't long until I was leaving for 6 months of infantry school down in Georgia.
Okay.
Where, it's basic training and infantry training are all in one. It's 22 weeks. You're off the grid. You're like,
wow.
You're living as a soldier. You're doing a deed. And I remember I went and saw that by myself, very intentionally, because I got some flack. Some people were like, "Oh, it's not Bruce." Dude, I loved everything about it. I loved the footage. I can't tell you, talk about soundtrack of our lives, how many times I would think back to like a scene from that him playing where we're like running at 4:30 in the morning and like, I know I'm going to eat in 2.5 hours and I'm starving right now. And it's like, it touched me at that point in my life. You talk transcendent and it meets us where we are, his music a lot of times.
Yeah.
That for some reason, it just really, I felt like he was doing in that something he so deeply wanted to do.
Yes.
For probably a very long time.
Yeah.
And was either afraid to do it or didn't move the box a little. One thing had to get changed, and I loved it. He felt free in it. A lot of people said it felt forced. I didn't think so. He's a musician. He's an artist.
I mean,
that's what artists do.
He's in his barn. He's got people around him. I was envious of the people that were getting there in that audience. I would have loved to have been there, and it was just it. And I love watching not just Bruce, but creative people having fun as they're making art. Yeah. Whether it's someone at a comic book convention I go to, and the guy's sitting there and he's at the table and he's sketching for kids or for adults, whether it's a local theater company putting on a play and you watching them do it, or if it's a guy at a bar sitting with a guitar and a little tip jar and he's just doing James Taylor and and just songs. I mean, I just love people showing joy in their lives. How long have you been? You said 11 years in the National Guard. Did I remember that?
No, 3, coming up on 3.
3. Why the National Guard?
I joined later in life, Jesse, and I talked about this, throughout my life a lot. When I was in college when 9/11 happened, my cousin, and in New Jersey, that impacted us significantly.
Oh, sure, I can imagine.
The world, but you're close to it. You had a front row seat. You knew people whose families lost people. It was a thing, and my cousin had joined the military the year before, and he was like a big brother to me, and so for a lot of years, I was that guy that almost joined. My parents after 9/11 were like, why don't you finish college? If you finish college and still want to join, like maybe you can do that. I think the thought of your son going to war, I guess.
Sure, absolutely.
That's a thing. and again, tied into Bruce at the end of it, but years go by and it's like, all right, I got a job, I got the girlfriend, I got this, I got that, and I never joined.
Yeah.
I was 35. I was in the gym one night in Bradley Beach, right up the street from a bakery that Bruce Springsteen will go to on occasion called Del Ponte's. And I'm in my gym, Jersey Shore Fitness Shop, Friday. It was a Friday night. I called a recruiter and I said, hey, I'd really like to join. And the guy said, well, how old are you? I said, a few questions. How old are you? 35.
Yeah.
He's like, you're done. Like, if you didn't shift, you have to shift by your 35th birthday.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean I'm done? Like, that's it? The guy's like, yeah. So I reached out to a buddy who's had a very successful career in the Navy, and he's like, look, man, I'll reach out because I know that you can get an age waiver for it.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things, man. And you hear a lot of guys who haven't served in the military and, say, oh, man, I wish I did. I almost did. And for a long time, I was that.
Yeah.
I really wished I did. And my cousin ended up deploying 4 times and, throughout the global war on terror. And, he experienced some issues because of that.
Yeah.
And to this day, the guy does so much to help other vets. It's so inspiring to hear. So that was it, and Bruce talks about it a lot. He talks about the Vietnam guys he met in California and,
sure.
And, that there were so many guys like that in my life that I just wanted to emulate. I looked up to them so much, what they gave up, what they sacrificed. And, it's something I really felt I had to do. And luckily I was able to do it.
And it sounds like you've enjoyed it. In other words, there is a satisfaction in it. You're glad you did it.
I am, Jesse, because it was eating me alive.
Yeah.
It's just we all have those things in our lives that, like, man, the regrets, the things I wish I did, the girl I wish I asked out.
Sure, absolutely.
The concert I wish I went to, the football game, you're a Cowboys fan. Like, did you miss a Super Bowl in the 90s?
Well, it is, I joke about this, but in a lot of ways, as a Springsteen fan, when you find him, you think of all the shows that happened before you were a fan. You're almost like you're chasing a missed extra point, right? Like your kicker mixed the extra point, and then the rest of the game you're chasing it. Like, okay, now do I go for 2? Oh, now I didn't get it. Now I'm down. Now I've got 2 points versus, and so yes, there is that way where and I talk about this a lot. To me, that's what Better Days is about. I believe that his song Better Days is telling you, enjoy life as it's happening now.
Yes.
Don't wait for your ship to come in, right now, and is what you should be enjoying and your journey. And I think very well done. Do you think you'll stay in it for a while?
I don't know. It's funny you said it because, you talk about chasing extra points. I went enlisted infantry. So, our job in the military, we're the guys closing the last 100 yards on the battlefield.
Right.
And that was very intentional. I had a college degree. I could have gone the officer route. I could have been an intelligence guy sitting in a tower, on a computer somewhere. But I went enlisted infantry because my generation fought a war. Right. We just did. And I didn't. So in my mind, I needed to go to where I could do that. And my buddy Ryan, I was talking about, he's not only, he's a Navy guy, but he's also been a SEAL for a considerable part of his career. And we talk about it a lot because I say, I'm an infantry guy. I've never seen combat, and I may not. Right. And he always says, he's like, Frank, don't chase that dragon. Yeah. Because it could catch you. Yeah. And oddly enough, he just, one of the guys that he serves with recently passed away. And it's deep, man. The whole thought of that is deep. And it's the amount that this generation, we talk about the greatest generation in World War II, and yes, absolutely. Yeah. But the guys who fought in Korea, the guys who fought in Vietnam, think about these global war on terror guys. Yeah. 20-year wars. Yes. They deployed my cousin 4 times. You have special forces guys, 11, 12, 15 combat deployments in 20 years. Yeah. I mean, that's a generation.
It is. But something to think about is I'm always someone who doesn't complain when I get the notice for jury duty. I'm like, oh, good. This will be. I wonder if it'll. I wonder, one, if they'll pick me, because you don't always get picked, and two, will it be an interesting case? And I always can remember the judge saying, I know some of you are going to sit here all day. You won't get picked on a jury. You'll go home and you'll think you've wasted your day. But the reality is, often a defendant and the prosecutor and the defense counsel will come to an agreement because there's a jury waiting to happen, right? So you, by just being there, have helped the wheels of justice. And I think the same thing could be said for someone like yourself. While you may never have been in combat, just the idea that you are there if you're needed helps make this nation safer. So thank you for that, right? And
Thank you. It's important. Yeah, service is important to me, and I try to do a lot in the community, and if I see somebody that I think I can help, and I just try to. And veterans to me, or I just veterans, single moms, these are people who, man, like day in and day out, they go through a lot, and it's just.
Do you think you'll go back into politics?
I don't know, man. Jesse, honestly, if I saw a spot that I thought I would enjoy the process of.
Yeah.
Because I don't think many people in politics are day to day making the type of difference that, to me, I can make outside of politics.
Yeah, I hear you.
And we talk about a food bank.
Yeah.
If I'm a politician, I got to spend time in my day making phone calls, asking people for $1,000 so I can put a TV commercial up telling everybody how much this guy is a bum.
Right.
Friday, you know what I'm doing Friday? I'm going to pick up a bunch of presents that our company has kind of collected.
Yeah.
For a toy drive for children of disabled veterans.
Nice.
So if you have a disability rating from the VA and you're a veteran, you can go to this place that's run by another veteran and get Christmas toys for your kid. No questions asked.
Yeah.
So I think about that. I'm like, that's what I'm doing Friday, instead of holding 3 fundraising meals where, a bunch of people get together and give me $1,000 and tell me how great I am. Versus, what I think we can do day to day to really impact people's lives. So
there is, Mark Holtz was a baseball announcer for the Texas Rangers. He was the radio guy for years, and he died of cancer within the same time frame as Princess Diana died. Wow. And so we sports guys, very tongue-in-cheek, of like, well, we're a little more upset about Mark Holtz than we are Princess Diana, because we heard Mark Holtz every day during the summer, right? He was in our lives. And his family put together a foundation, and all they do is they families with children or families that someone is facing a life-threatening illness, they take them to the ball game. They get them tickets, they get them food for concessions, and they go. There are other charities out there trying to find cures, and God bless them. And there are things, but we're just trying to make a family that's struggling and having a hard time. One night you can just forget about it and go watch a ball game.
Yeah. Yep. And that's it. So, look, maybe I get back in politics one day. I don't know. Yeah. It's not calling me. Yeah, I don't feel it. It's not. I've been there, done it. I mean, look, I worked by 35. I worked for the governor of my home state. I worked for 2 of my hometown congressmen. I mean, what's cooler than that? Like, you work for your hometown congressman.
Yeah, that's great.
Like, one was a football player, John Runyon, who, if you're a sports guy, I mean, he became a congressman. The other guy has been an incredible mentor to me, and him and his family really live by a way that inspires me. And I get fired up and most passionate when I am focused on very grassroots problems.
Yeah.
with very grassroots solutions.
Yeah.
Because that takes the noise out of it, dude.
Yeah.
You can't argue with somebody on Twitter about the family up the street who just had a fire 2 days before Thanksgiving and they don't have a table.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you want to sit here and tell me I'm evil because my baseball coach when I was a teenager happened to be running as a Republican for mayor and I helped him out and that's what made me a Republican.
Right. Well, and I was almost in tears this week. My company does peer recognition, and we call it we do roadside assistance for campers and recreation vehicles, the RV industry. And so we have our values, and so we do RV awards. So it's kind of a pun, right?
Sure.
And so peers nominate other people, and then if clients give us compliments, we give that to our agents and employees. And I got called up front along with my HR person, a couple of managers, and someone had written up that, her mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Her father has dementia, so he doesn't know what's going on. And she just wanted to acknowledge that we had told her to take care of her family. The job's here. If you can work, good. If you can't, and she's like, I gotta make money. So we worked out a schedule so you could be there for her mother and her father and be there for her family and still work. And it was just the right thing to do. I mean, it was just one. And as she talked about, I'd only been here 3 months. I'd only been with the company 3 months, and you guys did this. And we were crying when she read this article, this write-up about us. And I go, that's what this is about. That's what leadership's about. This is absolutely. I believe in capitalism. I believe that you need to make money and people need to have profits. And I understand, that I should pay my employees who are more productive more money than an employee who's not productive. But there should be a heart, and you should be able to work with people. And I think that's where we make a difference to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Day to day, man.
Day to day.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I do think, when Bruce says no one wins unless all of us win, that's what he means. I mean, that's what he means is we've got to be there for each other. And I know that as you talked about the Jeep commercial, right? Someone said the reaction of the far right and the far left of how mad they were at the Jeep commercial tells you how far away we are as a country, right? That both sides of the extreme were unhappy with him when all he was just saying is, hey, can we figure out a way to work with each other? I mean, right?
It was a cool commercial.
It was a cool commercial. In fact, Frank, I thought, this is a fake commercial. I said, this is someone took outtakes from Western Stars and put it together, right? Like, cause it looked like that. That is great.
Right, and that church, right?
Oh yeah.
The church, I mean, and Tom Zimney did it, right? I mean, what an amazing job done by him. I mean, it told a story. And again, like, let an artist be an artist.
Exactly.
He's wearing a cowboy hat. He's lives on a multi-million-dollar farm in Colts Neck, New Jersey. Hell yeah, he does. There's horses on it too, man. So
well,
maybe he is kind of a cowboy.
And I get that. Well, it was a chapel. I'm a Muslim, right? I'm a Jewish. And I'm like, I get it, but most hospitals have chapels that are non-denominational, that are about, and no one's going to get between you and your relationship to your higher power. We totally believe that. My friend, we have gone all over it, from the funny to the serious. I have just loved visiting with you. Any final thoughts before I ask you the Mary question?
Jesse, one of the things I say a lot is it's a good day for a good day. And
yes, I saw that.
And that was kind of born. I didn't make that up, but I started saying it, in a very difficult time. It's a good day for a good day. Just kind of through my head, bringing it. It's a good day for a good day, man. Like, you may not want And that to me, like, if there's somebody who's listening to this who's struggling, if they, made it through the hour of you and I pontificating, and they made it to this and they're struggling, or they're going through something difficult, or they're not, it's still a good day for a good day. And we can do one little thing, and I'm not perfect at it. We can do one little thing to help that neighbor, to lift somebody else up, especially when we're down. That I know that helps me immensely.
Yes.
So, look, man, that to me is, it's really helped me a lot in my life. So
yeah,
I'll leave you with that simple thought.
Very nice. All right. So if you are a fan of Frank's and you're listening to this, and this is the first time you've heard the podcast, thank you for joining me.
Subscribe and give them ratings.
Yes, exactly.
5 stars, baby. Jesse gets 5 stars, 100%. Let's do it.
So Jay Armstrong is a former honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. He would take every year his honors English class, and they would break apart Thunder Road as a poem. And they'd look at the themes, they'd look at the imagery Bruce uses, and then at the end of the 2 days, he would say, does Mary get in the car? So Frank, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car?
I don't want to. I'm an optimist by design.
Right.
I don't think she ever does.
Okay.
Ever.
Okay.
I think Mary, to me, and obviously Mary's been a recurring figure, but we'll keep it on that song itself. I don't think she does, because I think the greats, if Mary got in the car, that's the end of the story, man.
Okay.
That's it. What else is Bruce Springsteen searching for the rest of his life?
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is just, I don't think she did. I don't think she ever does. I think Mary is a figure, a person, a theme, a thought of that thing that you may never catch, but you can pursue your entire life.
Yes.
And I think, that's the idea of that open road and take you anywhere is like, yeah, well, if she got in, where the hell, you're done. That's it.
I get it. I think that's a good answer.
Jesse, I want to know what you think, though, because I never heard your side of it.
So a lot of people say that she does because, that album is a journey. And if she doesn't get in the car, there is no journey. So I believe, because I believe in happy endings, and I believe, I believe she gets in the car. I think
I can see it.
Yeah, I think that I often want to ask the question, I know in real life, Bruce's sister and her husband that he based the river on have a very successful marriage, right? Yep. They are still married. He talks about she married a cowboy and he still, does this. But I think about the people in the song, those imaginary characters, and would they say they have a successful marriage? And they talk about, is a dream alive if it don't come true, or is it something more? But I think happily ever after is complicated. And I've been married over 35 years, and, and Linda and I, have good days and we have bad days, and but the bottom line is we still like each other's company. And so therefore, in our mind, it's been a very happy, successful marriage. So, yeah, I think that Mary and, the singer of the song, they get together, and I think they have fights, and I think they have rough patches, and they think they have joys. But I think at the end of the day, they go, you know what? I'm glad you got in the car, and I'm glad we went on this journey together. That's what I think.
And I can see it. I'm rooting for it. I love it.
Yeah.
And even that, like, think about that, our diverging where we are, the Rorschach test.
Yeah.
I'm a 38-year-old single guy who's never been married.
Right.
And I live at the Jersey Shore. And to me, Mary is like that concept of that thing that's just always there, that like you think about, you just wish you had, you're chasing you. And I love both of the endings. You know, like
Yeah,
I love your way of viewing
yeah.
it. I love that, like that Mary from Born to Run is Mary from the River.
And the guy, Brian Koppelman, who is the co-creator of Billions.
Great show.
Yeah,
Great
great
show.
show. And he had a segment on his podcast, Ask Me Anything. And so I emailed, and his daughter said, I've got someone. And so she read my question. And I was just like thrilled, like, okay, I didn't get him on the podcast, but I got to answer the question. And his answer was, he doesn't want to know. The beauty of the song to him
Yeah.
is that Bruce left it unanswered.
Yeah.
And he said, that's a question. It's an interesting question, he said, but I don't want to know, because I think that's the beauty of the song, that you're left wondering, and what could it be? And and I think that's a beautiful answer too.
It all is, because you know
Yeah,
what? It makes us smile a little bit.
it
You know,
does.
look, I
It
mean,
does.
your listeners can't see it, but we've been smiling for the past hour. You know, two
We have
total
been.
strangers, like
Yes.
just yipping away about everything. We cover a lot of ground, my friend.
Yeah, we have. And this is
It's
just
been fun.
great. I feel like we could keep talking too. I just this is wonderful. If someone wants to reach you, what's the best way they can, Frank?
I mean, just find me on. If somebody wants to reach me, I feel bad for them, because I don't know what the hell they must be bored. But Frank Luna NJ is my Instagram and Twitter or whatever.
All right.
Hopefully, people are tweeting at us nice things, so we don't have to
Yes,
deal
absolutely.
with
Yes.
the anger that exists on the internet these days.
Oh, I do. Thank you, Frank. This was so much fun. I am so glad that someone suggested, and this was just a joy. I wish you continued health and success, and please be safe. And listeners, you be safe. Go do what your doctor suggest. Get vaccinated. Let's get out of this. Be good to each other, because that's the only way we're going to do through this. And as Frank talked about, right, those little things, we make a difference in each other's lives, really will.
Yeah. And Jesse, was a gentleman named Joe, who I've known a while, who I guess tweeted that you and I should chat. And you know, I don't know how we made it over an hour without touching on the pandemic, but you're right.
Yeah.
Be smart, be safe, and take care of each other. It's so simple. We learn it in kindergarten, and people have strong feelings on everything these days. So, just be kind. Just be kind about it.
And someone said this, and I can't remember who it said, but I think there's so much genius in people want to believe the worst in others and the best in themselves. And, and it just, that's true. Like, why would you not think that, well, I'm going to give this person the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume they didn't mean to hurt my feelings. I'm going to assume that they did this. And then versus why, because that's what I want people to believe about me.
The Lord's Prayer, right?
Yeah, it truly is. All right, my friend, you be safe.
Right,
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, bud.
Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts as well as a Merry Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now who does, you can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music. because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only, Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.